Private First Class Maya Rodriguez thought she was getting the easiest assignment of her deployment. Just 8 hours of routine perimeter watch at Forward Operating Base Blackwater. Nothing but empty desert, a thermos of coffee, and orders to radio in every 30 minutes. By sunrise, she'd prevented the largest security breach in the base's history and taken down 3 highly trained infiltrators using nothing but her standard-issue rifle, a combat knife, and the darkness itself. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The assignment sheet landed on Maya's bunk at 1800 hours with all the ceremony of discarded laundry. Guard duty, Sector 7, midnight to 0800. She crumpled the paper and tossed it toward the waste bin, missing by 6 inches. Just like her luck lately. "Could be worse," muttered her bunkmate, Specialist Jennifer Walsh, not looking up from the magazine she was reading. Remember when Thompson got stuck cleaning the latrines for a week straight? Maya pulled on her combat boots, lacing them with practiced efficiency. 3 months into her deployment at Forward Operating Base Blackwater, she'd drawn every undesirable duty assignment possible. Kitchen detail, equipment maintenance, vehicle inspections. Now, guard duty at the most boring sector on base, the eastern perimeter, where absolutely nothing happened except the occasional tumble of desert brush. Blackwater sat in a valley 40 miles northwest of Kandahar, surrounded by barren hills that looked like crumpled brown paper under the Afghan sun. The base housed roughly 800 personnel, from infantry units to intelligence analysts, all working to maintain stability in the region. Sector 7 monitored the approach from the Helmand River Valley, a stretch of empty wasteland that the command considered so low risk they typically assigned new recruits or disciplinary cases to watch it. Maya fell into the latter category, though not through any fault of her own. 2 weeks earlier, during a convoy escort mission, she'd questioned Lieutenant Morrison's route selection through a known IED corridor. She'd been right. They'd taken fire from Taliban fighters positioned exactly where she'd predicted. But questioning an officer's judgment, even correctly, earned her a reputation as a troublemaker. At 23:30 hours, she made her way to the guard tower in Sector 7, a modest concrete structure barely 15 feet high with sandbag reinforcements and a mounted spotlight. The soldier she was relieving, Private Davis, looked half asleep already. "Anything to report?" Maya asked, settling her M4 carbine against the wall. Davis yawned and stretched. "Negative. Quiet as a cemetery out there. Radio check every 30 minutes, standard protocol. Coffee's fresh if you want some." He gathered his gear and disappeared down the ladder, leaving Maya alone with the vast darkness of the Afghan night. She adjusted the night vision scope mounted on her rifle and scanned the perimeter. The landscape stretched endlessly, broken only by rocky outcroppings and the occasional withered tree. The first 2 hours passed without incident. Maya called in her radio checks precisely on schedule, reporting "all clear, Sector 7" to the communications center. She sipped coffee from her thermos and tried not to think about her sister's wedding next month, which she'd miss due to the deployment. At 02:30 hours, something changed. It started as a feeling more than anything tangible. A subtle shift in the night sounds, the way the wind moved differently across the desert floor. Maya had grown up hunting with her father in the mountains of Colorado, and she'd learned to trust her instincts about when something didn't belong in the natural rhythm of a place. She clicked off the tower's heating unit and listened carefully. The normal sounds were all present. The distant hum of generators from the main base, the occasional vehicle moving along internal roads, the soft rustle of wind through the razor wire. But underneath it all, something felt wrong. Maya raised her night vision scope and began a systematic scan of her sector. The green-tinted world revealed nothing unusual at first. Empty terrain, familiar landmarks, shadows cast by the half-moon overhead. She was about to lower the scope when movement caught her eye near a cluster of rocks roughly 300 meters out. She held her breath and focused on the spot. For several seconds, nothing. Then she saw it again. A brief shift in the shadows that didn't match the wind patterns. too deliberate, too controlled to be natural. Her heart rate increased, but her training kicked in. Don't assume, verify. She watched the area for another full minute, noting the exact location and timing of any movement. When she spotted a second anomaly 40 meters to the left of the first, her suspicions crystallized into certainty. Someone was out there. Maya's first instinct was to radio it in immediately, but she hesitated. She'd been wrong before, and calling in false alarms wouldn't improve her already tarnished reputation. Besides, protocol required positive identification before reporting potential threats. She needed to be absolutely certain. She switched her rifle to semi-automatic and continued observing. The movement pattern suggested at least 2 individuals, possibly 3, advancing in a coordinated manner toward the base perimeter. They moved with discipline, timing their advances to avoid the tower spotlight rotation and staying low to minimize their profile. These weren't random insurgents stumbling around in the dark. This was a planned infiltration. Maya's mouth went dry. Sector 7 had been chosen for this watch precisely because it was considered the least likely avenue of approach. The terrain was open, offering little concealment, and the distance from any major population centers made it an unlikely route for attack. But that same reasoning might make it attractive to someone looking to exploit a vulnerability. At 02:47 hours, she made her decision. She keyed her radio with minimal volume, speaking barely above a whisper. Basecom, this is Sector 7. Possible movement detected, 300 meters east-northeast of my position. Request permission to investigate. The response came back immediately. Sector 7, this is Basecom. Can you confirm hostile intent? Maya watched the shadows again. The figures had advanced another 20 meters while she'd been on the radio, now clearly visible as human shapes moving with tactical precision. Basecom, I have visual on 3 individuals moving in coordinated pattern toward the perimeter. Behavior consistent with hostile infiltration. Copy that, Sector 7. Maintain observation and report. Do not engage without authorization. Quick reaction force is being notified. Maya acknowledged the transmission, but felt her stomach drop. The quick reaction force would take at least 8 minutes to reach her position, assuming they moved immediately. At the current rate of advance, the infiltrators would reach the perimeter fence in less than 5. She continued watching, hoping she'd miscalculated their speed or direction. Instead, her worst fears were confirmed. The 3 figures had spread into a line formation and were definitely heading for the weakest point in Sector 7's defenses, a section where the fence followed a shallow depression that would provide concealment from the main base's observation towers. At 02:52 hours, the lead infiltrator reached the outer wire. Maya could see him clearly now through her scope, a man in dark clothing carrying what appeared to be wire cutters and a compact assault rifle. He began working on the fence while his 2 companions took overwatch positions. Their movements were professional, practiced. This wasn't their first infiltration. The base's entire eastern approach was about to be compromised, and Maya was the only thing standing between 800 sleeping soldiers and whatever these infiltrators had planned. She keyed her radio again, more urgently this time. Basecom, Sector 7, hostile contact, fence line is being breached. I count 3 individuals with weapons. Request immediate support. Roger, Sector 7, QRF is en route. ETA 6 minutes. Maintain position and do not engage unless directly threatened. 6 minutes might as well have been 6 hours. Maya watched the lead infiltrator cut through the first layer of wire, his companions scanning for threats while he worked. In less than 2 minutes, they'd have a clear path onto the base. She found herself facing an impossible choice. Follow orders and potentially watch the base's security be compromised, or act on her own initiative and risk court-martial for disobeying direct commands. The decision was made for her when the infiltrators' behavior suddenly changed. Instead of the cautious, methodical approach they'd maintained, they began moving with urgent speed. Something had shifted in their timeline. Maya realized they must have intercepted the radio transmissions. They knew the quick reaction force was coming, and now they were racing to complete their mission before backup arrived. The lead infiltrator finished cutting the fence and slipped through the gap. His companions followed immediately, and all three began moving rapidly toward the base's interior structures. Maya checked her watch. 02:54 hours. 4 minutes until help arrived, and 3 armed infiltrators were now inside the perimeter, heading directly toward the communications center and command post. She made her choice. Maya abandoned the guard tower. She grabbed her rifle, extra ammunition, and the tactical flashlight clipped to her vest, then descended the ladder in 3 quick bounds. The infiltrators had a 2-minute head start, but they didn't know the base layout like she did. More importantly, they didn't know someone was tracking them. The eastern sector's interior consisted of equipment storage warehouses, a motor pool, and several administrative buildings before reaching the main command area. Maya knew the most direct route would take the intruders past Building C4, a supply depot with a clear sightline to the communications facility. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. She sprinted across 50 meters of open ground, using the shadows cast by fuel tanks to mask her movement. Her combat boots made soft impacts on the packed dirt as she reached the corner of the first warehouse. Heart pounding, she pressed against the concrete wall and listened. Footsteps, multiple sets, moving with purpose about 30 meters ahead. Maya peered around the corner and spotted them immediately. 3 figures in dark tactical gear, moving in a wedge formation toward the command sector. The lead infiltrator carried bolt cutters and wore what appeared to be night vision goggles. The second man had a compact submachine gun and a heavy pack that could contain explosives. The third brought up the rear with an assault rifle, constantly scanning for threats. They moved like special operations soldiers. Disciplined, coordinated, lethal. Maya keyed her radio one final time, whispering urgently. Basecom, Sector 7. 3 hostiles moving toward Charlie Sector. I'm tracking them on foot. ETA on QRF? Static answered her. Then, Sector 7, return to your post immediately. That is a direct order. She clicked off the radio and shoved it into her cargo pocket. Orders or not, she wasn't letting these infiltrators reach their objective unopposed. The trio had reached the motor pool area, using parked Humvees and supply trucks as concealment while they navigated toward the command buildings. Maya paralleled their route, staying roughly 50 meters to their south and using every piece of available cover. At the edge of the motor pool, the infiltrators paused. Maya watched through her rifle scope as the team leader produced what looked like a handheld device, possibly a GPS unit or communications equipment. He studied it briefly, then pointed toward Building C7, the base's primary communications hub. Maya's blood ran cold. If they reached the comm center, they could disable the base's ability to call for external support, coordinate defensive responses, or even send distress signals. Whatever they were planning, cutting communications would be the perfect first step. The infiltrators began moving again, this time with increased urgency. They'd apparently confirmed their target location and were pushing hard to reach it before the quick reaction force arrived. Maya had to act. She considered her options. 3 against 1 meant a direct confrontation would likely end badly for her. But she had advantages they didn't know about. Intimate knowledge of the base layout, defensive positions, and the element of surprise. The motor pool offered several possibilities. Dozens of vehicles provided concealment and potential obstacles. More importantly, the area had multiple choke points where the infiltrators would be forced to expose themselves while navigating between buildings. Maya circled wide to the north, using a line of maintenance sheds to mask her movement. She needed to get ahead of the infiltrators and set up an ambush at the narrow passage between Buildings C5 and C6, the most direct route to the communications center. The passage was barely 15 feet wide, flanked by concrete walls with no alternative routes. She reached the ambush point with seconds to spare. Maya took position behind a concrete barrier, braced her rifle against the solid surface, and waited. Through her scope, she could see the mouth of the passage. The infiltrators would have to come through that gap. 30 seconds later, the first figure appeared. The team leader moved cautiously, weapon raised, scanning for threats as he entered the narrow space. Maya centered her crosshairs on his center mass and began applying pressure to the trigger. At this range, maybe 25 meters, she couldn't miss. But something made her hesitate. Once she fired, everything would change. She'd be committed to a firefight against professional soldiers with no backup for at least 3 more minutes. If she missed or failed to stop all 3 immediately, she'd likely die in this passage. The team leader had nearly reached the far end of the gap when Maya noticed something that changed everything. A small device attached to his vest was blinking red, some kind of timer or detonator. This wasn't just an infiltration mission. They were carrying explosives. Maya squeezed the trigger. The suppressed crack of her M4 echoed off the concrete walls. The team leader dropped instantly, his weapon clattering across the pavement. The other 2 infiltrators immediately took cover, one behind a concrete pillar, the other pressing against the wall near the passage entrance. "Contact," one of them shouted in accented English. "Sniper, 12 o'clock." Maya chambered another round and searched for her next target. The infiltrator behind the pillar was partially exposed, but the angle made a clean shot difficult. She needed to reposition. As she started to move, automatic weapons fire erupted from the passage. Bullets sparked off the concrete barrier inches from her head, forcing her to duck low. The infiltrators were laying down suppressing fire while trying to flank her position. Maya rolled left, putting more concrete between herself and the shooters. Through a gap in the barrier, she could see one infiltrator moving to gain a better angle on her position. She snap-fired twice, both rounds striking the concrete near his feet and forcing him back into cover. The sound of gunfire had finally awakened the base. Sirens began wailing in the distance, and she could hear shouted commands as personnel scrambled to respond to the attack. But the quick reaction force was still at least 2 minutes away, and these infiltrators weren't going to wait around to be captured. The second infiltrator suddenly broke from cover, sprinting across the open area toward a maintenance shed that would give him a clear shot at Maya's position. She tracked him through her scope, but hesitated for a split second when she realized he looked young, maybe 19 or 20. That hesitation nearly killed her. The third infiltrator, who'd been silent since the shooting started, appeared on her right flank with a submachine gun. He'd somehow circled around the passage and approached from her blind spot. Maya saw him just as he raised his weapon. She threw herself sideways as bullets tore through the air where she'd been crouching. Rolling behind another barrier, she came up firing, putting 3 rounds center mass into the flanking infiltrator before he could adjust his aim. He went down hard. 2 down, 1 to go. But the remaining infiltrator had used the distraction to his advantage. When Maya turned back toward the passage, he was gone. No sign of him behind the pillar or anywhere in the immediate area. Then she heard it, the distinctive sound of wire cutters working on chain-link fencing. He was cutting through the fence surrounding the communications building, less than 50 meters from her position. Maya sprinted from cover, abandoning concealment for speed. If the last infiltrator reached the comm center, he could complete whatever sabotage mission the team had planned. The device she'd seen on the team leader's vest suggested they intended to destroy the facility, not just disable it. She reached the communications building fence just as the infiltrator finished cutting his entry point. He was already halfway through the gap, moving toward the building's main entrance with a heavy pack that almost certainly contained explosives. "Stop!" Maya shouted, raising her rifle. "Drop your weapons and get on the ground." The infiltrator spun toward her, bringing up his assault rifle. For a moment, they faced each other across 20 feet of open ground. A young American soldier and a determined enemy combatant, both knowing only one of them would survive the next few seconds. The infiltrator's weapon was almost level when Maya fired twice. Both rounds found their target, and he collapsed beside the communications building entrance, his assault rifle sliding away across the concrete. Maya approached cautiously, weapon ready, but the threat was over. All 3 infiltrators were down. Their mission failed just meters from success. The quick reaction force finally arrived, tactical vehicles screeching to a halt around the communications building. Soldiers poured out, weapons raised, shouting commands and securing the area. Squad leader Sergeant Martinez reached Maya first, taking in the scene with wide eyes. "Rodriguez, what the hell happened here?" Maya lowered her rifle and looked at the 3 bodies scattered around the communications facility. 3 infiltrators tried to breach the comm center. I stopped them. It wasn't until that moment, with adrenaline fading and the immediate danger past, that Maya realized what she'd actually accomplished. A routine guard duty assignment had turned into a single-handed defense of the entire base's communications capabilities. The base exploded into controlled chaos within minutes of the gunfire stopping. Floodlights blazed across every sector, transforming the dark Afghan night into artificial daylight. Personnel emerged from barracks and duty stations, some still pulling on gear as they responded to the emergency protocols that hadn't been activated since the base's construction 18 months earlier. Maya found herself at the center of a whirlwind of activity she'd never experienced. Military police secured the scene, while medics checked the 3 infiltrators, confirming what Maya already knew: none had survived the engagement. Intelligence officers photographed everything, collecting weapons, equipment, and personal effects that might reveal the attacker's origins or mission details. Colonel Sarah Henderson, the base commander, arrived 15 minutes after the shooting ended. Maya had never spoken directly to the colonel before, had only seen her during change of command ceremonies and formal briefings. Now she stood 3 feet away, studying Maya with intense gray eyes that seemed to catalog every detail. "Private Rodriguez, I need a complete briefing on tonight's events. Start from the beginning and don't leave anything out." Maya recounted the entire sequence, from the subtle changes in the night sounds that first alerted her to something wrong, through her decision to abandon the guard tower and track the infiltrators on foot, to the final engagement at the communications building. Colonel Henderson listened without interruption, occasionally glancing at the evidence bags containing the infiltrators' equipment. "You disobeyed a direct order to return to your post," the colonel said when Maya finished. "Yes, ma'am." "You left your assigned position without authorization." "Yes, ma'am." "You engaged hostile forces without backup or approval from command." Maya hesitated. This was the moment that would define the rest of her military career, possibly her entire future. "Ma'am, I made a tactical decision based on immediate threat assessment. The infiltrators would have reached the communications center before the quick reaction force arrived. I believed the mission-critical nature of their target justified independent action." Colonel Henderson studied Maya for a long moment. "The mission-critical nature," she repeated slowly. "Yes, ma'am. If they'd succeeded in destroying the comm center, we would have lost all external communication capabilities, no ability to coordinate with higher command, call for medical evacuation, or request air support if the infiltration was part of a larger attack." The colonel nodded once, then turned to examine the heavy pack the final infiltrator had been carrying. An explosive ordnance disposal team had already confirmed it contained enough plastic explosive to level the entire communications building and potentially damage adjacent structures. "Major Thompson," Colonel Henderson called to the intelligence officer leading the investigation, "what do we know about these individuals?" Major Thompson approached with a folder of preliminary findings. All 3 carried identifications suggesting they're foreign nationals, though the documents appear to be high-quality forgeries. Their equipment is military-grade but unmarked, no manufacturer stamps or serial numbers that might trace back the specific sources. The weapons are variants of Russian designs, but manufactured elsewhere, possibly Pakistan or Iran. Training level: professional. Their movement patterns, equipment selection, and tactical approach suggest a special operations background. This wasn't a random insurgent attack. It was a carefully planned mission executed by experienced soldiers. Colonel Henderson absorbed this information while studying the scene. The bodies lay where they'd fallen, positioned in ways that told the story of the engagement. The first infiltrator had been caught completely by surprise in the passage between buildings. The second had been attempting to flank Maya's position when she eliminated him. The third had nearly reached his objective before being stopped at the communications building entrance. "Private Rodriguez," the colonel said, turning back to Maya, "walk me through your tactical thinking during the engagement itself." Maya explained her decision to set up an ambush at the choke point, her reasoning for targeting the team leader first, and how she adapted when the remaining infiltrators attempted to flank her position. She described the split-second decision to abandon her covered position when she realized the final infiltrator was cutting through the communications fence. "You had multiple opportunities to wait for backup," Colonel Henderson observed. "At any point during the engagement, you could have taken a defensive position and held until the QRF arrived. Why did you continue pursuing them?" "Ma'am, I observed what appeared to be a timing device on the team leader's equipment. Combined with their coordinated movement and professional behavior, I assessed they were operating on a specific timeline. Waiting for backup might have allowed them to complete their mission, even if they were ultimately captured or killed." Major Thompson looked up from examining the infiltrator's gear. "She's right about the timing device. We found a synchronized detonator set for 0315 hours, roughly 8 minutes after the engagement ended. If they'd reached the communications center and planted their explosives, the entire facility would have been destroyed right around the time our QRF was supposed to arrive." The implications of that timeline hit everyone present simultaneously. The infiltrators hadn't just been planning to disable communications, they'd intended to eliminate the quick reaction force as well, or at least create enough chaos and confusion to facilitate escape or follow-up attacks. Colonel Henderson walked to the communications building entrance, examining the cut fence and the final infiltrator's position. "Private Rodriguez, you realize your actions tonight likely prevented not just the loss of our communications capability, but potential casualties among the QRF personnel." "I hadn't considered that specific aspect, ma'am, but yes, the timing would have put our people at risk." 8 soldiers in the quick reaction force," the colonel said quietly. "They would have arrived exactly when these explosives were set to detonate." The weight of that statement settled over the scene. Maya had been thinking about protecting the base's operational capabilities, but she'd inadvertently saved the lives of 8 fellow soldiers who had no idea they were walking into a death trap. Dawn began breaking over the eastern hills as the investigation continued. Forensics teams processed the scene while intelligence analysts examined every piece of equipment the infiltrators had carried. Their findings painted a picture of a sophisticated operation that had been planned for weeks or possibly months. The infiltrators had detailed maps of the base layout, including recent construction and modifications that wouldn't have been available through open sources. They carried encrypted communication devices that suggested coordination with outside elements. Most significantly, they'd known exactly which route would avoid most security measures and bring them closest to their target.
This was an inside job, Major Thompson concluded after reviewing the evidence. Or at least, someone provided them with current intelligence about our security posture and facility layout. Colonel Henderson processed this information with visible concern. A security breach of this magnitude suggested either a compromised individual within the base or a significant intelligence failure that had allowed hostile forces to conduct detailed reconnaissance over an extended period. "Private Rodriguez," she said, "I want you to think carefully about the past few weeks. Any unusual activity, personnel asking questions about security procedures, anyone showing interest in the eastern perimeter or guard rotations, anything that seemed out of place." Maya considered the question seriously. The routine of base life tended to blur together, but now that she was looking for anomalies, certain details stood out. "Ma'am, about 10 days ago, there was a contractor inspection team that examined the perimeter fencing. They spent considerable time in Sector 7, took photographs and measurements. I was told it was a routine maintenance assessment." "Who authorized that inspection?" "I don't know, ma'am. Lieutenant Morrison briefed the guard details about it the day before." Colonel Henderson exchanged glances with Major Thompson. Lieutenant Morrison was the same officer whose judgment Maya had questioned during the convoy mission, the incident that had earned her disciplinary guard duties. We'll need to review all contractor access records for the past month, cross-reference with personnel who had knowledge of guard rotation schedules and sector assignments. As the investigation expanded, Maya found herself in an increasingly complex situation. She'd gone from facing potential disciplinary action for disobeying orders to being a key witness in what appeared to be a major security investigation involving possible espionage or collaboration with hostile forces. The sun climbed higher, and the base gradually returned to normal operations, though with significantly enhanced security measures. Maya remained at the scene, answering questions and providing details about every aspect of the night's events. By 0900 hours, she'd been awake for over 24 hours and was running on adrenaline and coffee. Colonel Henderson finally dismissed her with instructions to report to the command post at 1400 hours for additional briefings. As Maya walked back toward her barracks, she passed groups of soldiers discussing the night's events in hushed conversations. Word had spread quickly through the base about the infiltration attempt and how a single soldier on routine guard duty had prevented what could have been a catastrophic security breach. The looks she received ranged from curiosity to respect to something approaching awe. Less than 12 hours earlier, she'd been just another soldier serving disciplinary guard duty. Now, she's the person who had single-handedly stopped a professional military assault on their base. Maya never made it to her barracks. Halfway across the compound, Sergeant First Class Rebecca Carter intercepted her with new orders. "Rodriguez, you're wanted in the secure briefing room immediately. Intelligence just cracked one of those encrypted devices." The secure briefing room was located in the base's most protected building, surrounded by signal-blocking materials and accessible only to personnel with appropriate clearances. Maya had never been inside before. The room contained a large conference table, multiple computer terminals, and wall-mounted screens displaying tactical maps and satellite imagery. Major Thompson was waiting, with two other intelligence officers she didn't recognize, along with a woman in civilian clothes who introduced herself as Agent Lisa Chen from the Defense Intelligence Agency. The presence of a DIA agent meant this situation had escalated far beyond a simple base security incident. "Private Rodriguez," Agent Chen began, "the intelligence we've recovered suggests this infiltration was part of a larger operation targeting multiple NATO facilities across the region. Your actions last night may have disrupted more than just a local attack." She activated one of the wall screens, displaying a network diagram with dozens of connected nodes. The encrypted device you recovered contained communication logs with at least 15 other cells, coordinated timing for simultaneous attacks, and detailed intelligence about security weaknesses at 7 different military installations. Maya studied the diagram, recognizing some of the base names from regional briefings. "Ma'am, are you saying there are 14 other attacks happening?" "Were," Sakara corrected. "The communication logs show this network was operating on a synchronized timeline. When your infiltrators failed to check in after their scheduled destruction of our communications facility, it triggered abort protocols for the other operations." Agent Chen pulled up another screen showing intercepted radio traffic. "We've been monitoring the frequencies these devices were using. Within 2 hours of your engagement, we recorded stand-down orders being transmitted to cells positioned near installations in 3 different countries. Your success here caused the entire network to collapse." The implications were staggering. Maya had thought she was protecting one communication center at Forward Operating Base Blackwater. Instead, she'd apparently prevented a coordinated attack across multiple countries that could have crippled NATO operations throughout the region. "However," Agent Chen continued, "we still have the problem of how these infiltrators obtained such detailed information about our security procedures. Someone with significant access provided them with information that should have been compartmentalized and secure." Major Thompson activated another display showing personnel access records. "We've identified 3 individuals who had both the clearance level and opportunity to provide the intelligence these infiltrators possessed. Unfortunately, one of them is Lieutenant Morrison." Maya felt her stomach drop. Lieutenant Morrison had been the officer who'd assigned her to guard duty in the first place, had briefed the guards about the contractor inspection team, and had access to security rotation schedules. "We need to understand exactly what Lieutenant Morrison told you about your assignment," Agent Chen said. "Every detail, no matter how insignificant it might seem." Maya recounted her interactions with Lieutenant Morrison over the past 3 weeks, from the convoy incident that had earned her disciplinary duties through the specific instructions she'd received about guard rotation in Sector 7. As she spoke, she noticed the intelligence officers taking careful notes and exchanging meaningful glances. "Private Rodriguez," Major Thompson said when she finished, "did Lieutenant Morrison ever ask you questions about your background, your family, or your motivations for enlisting?" "Yes, sir. After the convoy incident, he called me to his office for what he said was a counseling session. He asked about my family situation, whether I had financial difficulties, if I was satisfied with my career progression."
Agent Chen leaned forward. "What specifically did you tell him?" "That my family owns a small ranch in Colorado that's been struggling financially. My father took out loans against the property to keep it operating, and my sister's wedding expenses were adding to their debt load. I mentioned that my deployment pay was helping, but it wouldn't be enough to solve their long-term problems." The room fell silent. Maya realized she'd just described the exact profile of someone who might be susceptible to recruitment by hostile intelligence services. Financial pressure combined with access to sensitive information. "Did Lieutenant Morrison offer you any solutions to your family's financial problems?" Agent Chen asked carefully. "He mentioned that there were sometimes opportunities for soldiers with good records to earn additional compensation through special assignments or consulting work with defense contractors." Maya paused, remembering the conversation more clearly. "He said he'd keep me in mind if anything came up that matched my skills." Major Thompson and Agent Chen exchanged glances that confirmed Maya's growing suspicion. Lieutenant Morrison had been evaluating her as a potential asset for the hostile network. "Ma'am," Maya said, "was I being recruited?" "We believe Lieutenant Morrison was assessing your vulnerability," Agent Chen replied. "Your assignment to Sector 7 wasn't disciplinary action. It was positioning you in the exact location where these infiltrators needed inside assistance." The pieces began falling into place with sickening clarity. The guard rotation put Maya alone in the most isolated sector. The contractor inspection team that had mapped the perimeter defenses. The specific timing that would have placed her on duty when the infiltrators arrived. "He expected me to help them," Maya said, more to herself than to the others in the room. "The infiltrators carried communication equipment configured to contact someone inside the base. We believe they expected to coordinate with an asset who would disable perimeter sensors, provide real-time security updates, and potentially assist with their escape after completing the mission." Maya felt sick. Not only had Lieutenant Morrison tried to recruit her as a traitor, but when she'd questioned his convoy route decision, she'd unknowingly demonstrated exactly the kind of tactical awareness that made her valuable to hostile intelligence services. "What happens now?" she asked. Agent Chen pulled up a new screen displaying Lieutenant Morrison's service record and recent activities. "We've placed him under surveillance, but we can't move against him yet. We need to identify his contacts within the hostile network and determine how much damage has already been done to regional security. We also need to understand how many other soldiers he might have approached," Major Thompson added. "You may not have been his only recruitment target." The briefing continued for another 2 hours, covering operational security protocols, communication protocols, and Maya's role in the ongoing investigation. She would continue her normal duties, but report any contact from Lieutenant Morrison or anyone asking unusual questions about base security. As the meeting concluded, Colonel Henderson entered the briefing room with news that changed everything again. "Lieutenant Morrison is gone," she announced. "His quarters are empty, personal effects removed, and his vehicle is missing from the motor pool. Gate guards report he left the base at 0630, claiming he had orders for a meeting in Kandahar." Agent Chen cursed under her breath. "He knows we're on to him. The investigation timeline just accelerated dramatically."
"There's more," Colonel Henderson continued. "We found his computer hard drive in his quarters, professionally wiped, but not before he printed several documents. Based on the printer logs, he accessed personnel files for at least 12 soldiers stationed at this base, all with similar profiles to Private Rodriguez." Maya realized the full scope of what Lieutenant Morrison had been planning. She hadn't been his only target. She'd been part of a systematic effort to compromise multiple soldiers who could provide intelligence and assistance for future operations. "The network may be larger than we initially assessed," Major Thompson said grimly. "If Morrison was running recruitment operations here, there could be similar efforts at other installations throughout the region." Agent Chen began issuing rapid instructions to her team. "I want surveillance on every soldier whose file Morrison accessed, full background checks on anyone he's had extended contact with in the past 6 months, and get me a complete analysis of every security procedure he had knowledge of. We need to know what the enemy knows about our operations." Maya found herself at the center of an expanding investigation that now involved potential espionage, recruitment of military personnel, and compromised security at multiple levels. What had started as a routine guard duty assignment had uncovered a sophisticated intelligence operation that threatened NATO operations across the entire theater. The afternoon briefing she'd been scheduled for was canceled as the base went into full security lockdown. Personnel movement was restricted, communications were monitored, and counterintelligence teams began the systematic process of identifying and eliminating security vulnerabilities. Maya was escorted back to her barracks under discreet security protection. The investigation had revealed she was likely still a target. If the hostile network believed she might have information about their compromised operation, they could attempt to eliminate her to prevent further damage to their activities. As she finally reached her quarters, 18 hours after leaving for what should have been routine guard duty, Maya realized her military career had changed forever. She was no longer just a soldier serving her deployment. She was a key witness in an international intelligence investigation that could reshape security operations throughout the entire theater. 3 days later, Maya received orders that would take her far from forward operating base Blackwater. The summons came directly from General Patricia Hawkins, commander of all NATO forces in the region. Maya had never imagined she'd be in the same room as a 3-star general, much less briefing one on tactical operations. But the intelligence recovered from the Infiltrators had revealed connections to hostile networks operating in at least 4 countries. And Maya's first-hand knowledge of the attack had become crucial to understanding how the enemy operated. The flight to Bagram Airfield took 2 hours aboard a military transport that also carried Agent Chen and a team of counterintelligence specialists. During the journey, Maya learned the full scope of what her actions had prevented. The coordinated attack was scheduled to target communication facilities, supply depots, and command centers simultaneously across 7 NATO installations. Agent Chen explained over the aircraft's engine noise. The goal wasn't just tactical damage. It was designed to create a communications blackout that would prevent coordinated response to a larger conventional attack planned for the following week. Maya studied the classified briefing materials she'd been cleared to read. The hostile network had been planning the most significant assault on NATO forces since the initial invasion of Afghanistan. Her intervention hadn't just saved forward operating base Blackwater, it had prevented a regional war. At Bagram, she was escorted to a secure complex where representatives from multiple intelligence agencies had assembled. The briefing room contained officials from American, British, German, and Canadian forces, all focused on dismantling the network that had come so close to success. General Hawkins was a compact woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and eyes that seemed to catalog every detail around her. She reviewed Maya's file while the assembled officers waited in silence. "Private Rodriguez," the general began, "your actions at Forward Operating Base Blackwater demonstrated exceptional tactical judgment under pressure. However, the intelligence we've gathered suggests your role in this situation may not be finished. She activated a wall display showing intercepted communications. Lieutenant Morrison made contact with his handlers after fleeing the base. We've been monitoring those communications, and they indicate the network is planning to eliminate you as a potential threat to their remaining operations. Maya felt cold despite the room's warmth. Ma'am, they consider me a threat? You're the only person who observed their infiltration techniques in detail and survived. You've also been exposed to intelligence about their recruitment methods and operational planning. From their perspective, you represent a significant security risk. Agent Chen pulled up another screen showing recent intelligence reports. We've identified at least 3 separate attempts to locate you since Lieutenant Morrison's defection. They're using considerable resources to track your movements and current assignment. General Hawkins leaned forward. Private Rodriguez, we're prepared to offer you several options. We can relocate you to a secure installation in the continental United States, assign you to a non-combat role with enhanced security protection, or, she paused, studying Maya carefully, we can use their interest in you to our advantage. The room fell silent as Maya processed the implications of that final option. Ma'am, are you suggesting I be used as bait? I'm suggesting you have unique knowledge and experience that could help us identify and eliminate the remaining network elements. The choice is entirely yours, but I want you to understand the full scope of what we're facing. She activated another display showing a map of the region with dozens of marked locations. Our analysis indicates this network has been operating for at least 18 months, possibly longer. They've successfully recruited assets at multiple installations, compromised security procedures, and gathered intelligence that could be used for future attacks. Lieutenant Morrison was just one node in a much larger operation. Maya studied the map, recognizing several base locations where friends from training were currently stationed. The network's reach was far more extensive than she'd realized. What would using me as bait involve? She asked. Agent Chen took over the briefing. We would publicize your role in stopping the infiltration, making you visible enough that the network would attempt to contact or eliminate you. You'd be placed in a controlled environment where we could monitor all approaches and potentially capture operatives who reveal themselves by targeting you. It's dangerous, General Hawkins added bluntly. We'd provide protection, but there would be real risk involved. These are professional operatives with resources and training. Maya considered her options while studying the faces around the conference table. Every person in the room was depending on intelligence gathering and counter-operations to protect thousands of military personnel throughout the region. Her unique position as both a witness and a target gave her value in dismantling the network that had nearly succeeded in its devastating attack. Ma'am, if I agree to this, what guarantees do I have that the operation will actually eliminate the network rather than just expose me to additional risk? General Hawkins smiled slightly, the first expression of approval Maya had seen from her. You ask the right questions, Private. We can't guarantee complete success, but we can guarantee that this network will continue operating and threatening our personnel until we eliminate it entirely. Your involvement could provide the breakthrough we need. The briefing continued for another hour, covering operational details, security protocols, and contingency plans. Maya would be transferred to a base in Germany, where intelligence indicated the network had significant activity. Her cover story would be that she was receiving recognition for her actions at Forward Operating Base Blackwater, making her visible to hostile surveillance while providing justification for enhanced security measures. As the meeting concluded, Maya made her decision. General, I'll do it, but I have one condition. What's that, Private? I want to be involved in the planning and execution, not just used as passive bait. If my knowledge and experience are valuable enough to risk my life for, they're valuable enough to include me in the operational decision-making. General Hawkins exchanged glances with the other officers present. That's unconventional. You're requesting involvement in intelligence operations typically reserved for personnel with years of specialized training. Ma'am, 3 days ago, I was on routine guard duty. The situation has been unconventional from the beginning. After a brief consultation with her staff, General Hawkins nodded. Agreed. You'll receive accelerated training in counterintelligence procedures and operational security. Agent Chen will oversee your preparation. The transformation began immediately. Maya was transferred to a classified facility where she underwent intensive instruction in surveillance detection, communication security, and defensive tactics. She learned to identify hostile surveillance, use encrypted communication devices, and recognize recruitment approaches. More importantly, she gained insight into how the network operated. The intelligence analysis revealed a sophisticated organization that had been planning operations against NATO forces for years, using a combination of recruited assets, professional operatives, and detailed reconnaissance to identify vulnerabilities. Lieutenant Morrison had been just one of dozens of recruitment officers working throughout the region. His specific role had been identifying soldiers with financial pressures or personal grievances who could be developed as intelligence sources. Maya's questioning of his convoy decisions had inadvertently demonstrated the tactical awareness that made her valuable to their operations. 2 weeks after leaving Forward Operating Base Blackwater, Maya arrived at Ramstein Air Base in Germany with a new identity as a liaison officer, receiving commendation for exceptional service. Intelligence indicated the network had significant operations in the area, and her presence would serve as both recognition for her actions and an opportunity to draw out hostile operatives. The plan was elegantly simple: make Maya visible enough to attract network attention while maintaining sufficient security to protect her and capture anyone who approached. Public ceremonies would establish her presence, controlled social interactions would provide opportunities for recruitment attempts, and comprehensive surveillance would document every contact. What none of them anticipated was how quickly the network would respond, or how sophisticated their approach would be. On her third day at Ramstein, Maya received a phone call that changed everything again. The voice was American, female, and completely professional. "Private Rodriguez, this is Colonel Janet Walsh with the Inspector General's office. We need to meet regarding your testimony about events at Forward Operating Base Blackwater. There have been allegations about your conduct during the incident, and we need to resolve them before your commendation ceremony." Maya recognized the sophisticated approach immediately, using official channels and her moment of vulnerability to establish contact. But she also realized the network had made a critical mistake. There was no Colonel Janet Walsh in the Inspector General's office, and Maya's commendation ceremony wasn't scheduled for another week. The hunters had just become the hunted. Maya's finger hovered over the callback button on her secure phone. Agent Chen had briefed her on exactly this scenario: a contact claiming official authority while using information that suggests insider knowledge. The network was making their move faster than anyone had anticipated. "Don't call back immediately," Agent Chen had instructed during her training. "Let them think you're considering it. Meanwhile, we trace the call and identify their surveillance positions." Maya set the phone aside and continued her planned activities at Ramstein. She visited the base exchange, attended a mandatory briefing on European theater operations, and maintained the routine of a soldier processing through administrative requirements. All the while, the surveillance team Agent Chen had positioned around the base tracked every person who showed interest in her movements. The callback came 6 hours later. Maya answered on the third ring, projecting just enough authenticity to seem authentic. "Provider Walsh, this is Private Rodriguez returning your call." "Private Rodriguez, thank you for getting back to me. I understand this situation must be stressful, but we need to address these allegations quickly. Can you meet me this evening at the Kaiserslautern Marriott? We can handle this matter discreetly, away from base personnel who might be involved in the complaint process." Maya recognized multiple red flags in the approach. Military investigators didn't conduct interviews at civilian hotels. Allegations would be handled through official channels with proper documentation, and no legitimate colonel would suggest avoiding base personnel during an official investigation. "Ma'am, I'd prefer to handle this through my chain of command. Can you provide me with the specific nature of these allegations and the proper paperwork?" There was a pause that lasted several seconds too long. Private Rodriguez, I appreciate your caution, but the sensitive nature of this investigation requires off-base coordination. The allegations involve potential security violations during your engagement with hostile forces. We need to verify your account before proceeding with any commendation ceremonies. The mention of security violations was calculated to create anxiety and urgency. Maya had been trained to recognize this psychological pressure technique, but she also understood the network was revealing valuable information about their situation. Colonel, I'll need to check with my current commanding officer. Can I call you back in 2 hours? Of course, Private Rodriguez, but please understand that delay could complicate the resolution of this matter. The line went dead, and Maya immediately contacted Agent Chen through the secure communication system they'd established. They're moving faster than we anticipated, Agent Chen confirmed when they met 20 minutes later in a soundproofed room beneath the base communications center. The phone call originated from a location in Kaiserslautern, but it was routed through multiple relays that suggest sophisticated technical capabilities. Maya revealed the transcript of the conversation that had been automatically recorded. They know about the commendation ceremony, which means they have access to official scheduling information. They also referenced security violations, which suggests knowledge of the actual investigation.
We've identified the hotel they mentioned, Agent Chen continued. It's a logical choice for their purposes. Multiple entrances and exits, a civilian environment where weapons and surveillance equipment wouldn't be immediately obvious, and a location that would require you to travel off-base without military escort. The surveillance team had already positioned assets around the Marriott and identified several individuals conducting counter-surveillance activities in the area. The network was preparing for the meeting, whether Maya agreed to it or not. They're confident enough in their approach to commit resources, Maya observed. That suggests they believe they can either recruit me successfully or eliminate me if recruitment fails. Agent Chen pulled up building schematics on her laptop. We've identified at least 4 operatives in positions around the hotel, professional-level surveillance and counter-surveillance activities. If you agree to meet them, you'll be walking into a controlled environment where they have every advantage. Maya studied the hotel layout, noting sightlines, escape routes, and positions where hostile operatives could maintain observation while remaining concealed. What's our tactical advantage if we proceed with the meeting? You'll be equipped with tracking devices, audio recording equipment, and emergency communication capabilities. We'll have a response team positioned within 2 minutes of the meeting location. Most importantly, we'll be able to identify their operational methods and potentially capture operatives who reveal themselves by participating in the meeting. The risk was substantial, but so was the potential intelligence value. Maya had learned enough about network operations to understand they rarely committed multiple assets to a single recruitment attempt unless the target was considered exceptionally valuable or threatening. They're not just trying to recruit me, Maya realized. They're trying to determine how much damage I've done to their operations and what counterintelligence activities are underway. Agent Chen nodded grimly. Which means they'll come prepared for interrogation techniques that go far beyond simple recruitment conversations. Maya made her decision. I'll take the meeting, but I want modifications to the standard surveillance plan. What modifications? They're expecting me to be nervous and potentially cooperative. Instead, I want to appear confident and knowledgeable about their operations. If they realize I'm actively working counterintelligence, they might reveal more about their network structure while trying to assess the threat I represent. Agent Chen considered this approach carefully. That's significantly more dangerous. If they conclude you're an active threat rather than a potential asset, they'll likely attempt elimination rather than recruitment. But it also means they'll have to communicate with higher levels of their organization for guidance. More communication means more opportunities for interception and analysis. The plan required careful preparation. Maya would attend the meeting equipped with recording devices and emergency communication equipment, but she would also carry intelligence materials designed to convince the network she had access to classified information about their operations. The goal was to make them believe she represented a significant security breach that required immediate attention from senior operatives.
At 1800 hours, Maya left Ramstein Air Base in a civilian vehicle and drove the 20-minute route to Kaiserslautern. The surveillance team maintained discreet observation while she followed the prescribed route to the Marriott Hotel. The lobby was busy with typical evening activity: business travelers, tourists, and local residents using the hotel's restaurant and bar facilities. Maya identified her contact immediately: a woman in her 40s wearing a business suit and carrying a briefcase that suggested official authority. "Private Rodriguez, I'm Colonel Walsh. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." The woman's handshake was firm, her eye contact direct, and her overall demeanor projected exactly the kind of professional competence Maya would expect from a senior military officer. If she hadn't known this was a hostile operative, the performance would have been completely convincing. "Colonel, I appreciate you taking the time to address these allegations. Can you provide me with more specific information about what I'm accused of?" They moved to a quiet corner of the hotel lobby, where the supposed colonel opened her briefcase and produced official-looking documents. The allegations involve unauthorized disclosure of classified operational details regarding your engagement with hostile forces at Forward Operating Base Blackwater. There are suggestions that you may have provided information to unauthorized personnel. Maya examined the documents, noting they contained accurate details about the infiltration incident, but also information that hadn't been included in official reports. The network had access to intelligence sources beyond what Lieutenant Morrison could have provided. "Colonel, these documents contain information I never disclosed to anyone outside official channels. How would unauthorized personnel have access to operational details that were classified above my clearance level?" The woman's expression shifted slightly, revealing the first crack in her professional facade. "That's precisely what we're trying to determine, Private Rodriguez. We need to understand who you've spoken with and what information may have been compromised." Maya recognized the interrogation technique immediately, using accurate information to establish credibility, then probing for additional information under the guise of investigation. But she also realized the network had made another critical error by revealing the extent of their knowledge. "Colonel, I think there's been a misunderstanding about my role in this situation," Maya said, reaching into her bag and producing a folder of her own. "I haven't been disclosing classified information. I've been collecting it." She opened the folder to reveal surveillance photographs, communication intercepts, and analysis reports that Agent Chen had prepared as props for this exact scenario. The documents appeared to show detailed intelligence about network operations, recruitment activities, and operational planning. The woman's professional demeanor disappeared entirely as she realized Maya wasn't a potential security breach, she was an active counterintelligence operative who had been gathering information about their network from the beginning. The trap had been sprung, but now Maya found herself face-to-face with a hostile operative who had just realized she represented a far greater threat than anyone had anticipated.
"Colonel, I appreciate you taking the time to address these allegations. Can you provide me with more specific information about what I'm accused of?" They moved to a quiet corner of the hotel lobby where the supposed colonel opened her briefcase and produced official-looking documents. The allegations involved unauthorized disclosure of classified operational details regarding your engagement with hostile forces at Forward Operating Base Blackwater. There are suggestions that you may have provided information to unauthorized personnel. Maya examined the documents, noting they contained accurate details about the infiltration incident, but also information that hadn't been included in official reports. The network had access to intelligence sources beyond what Lieutenant Morrison could have provided. "Colonel, these documents contain information I never disclosed to anyone outside official channels. How would unauthorized personnel have access to operational details that were classified above my clearance level?" The woman's expression shifted slightly, revealing the first crack in her professional facade. "That's precisely what we're trying to determine, Private Rodriguez. We need to understand who you've spoken with and what information may have been compromised." Maya recognized the interrogation technique immediately, using accurate information to establish credibility, then probing for additional intelligence under the guise of investigation. But she also realized the network had made another critical error by revealing the extent of their knowledge. "Colonel, I think there's been a misunderstanding about my role in this situation," Maya said, reaching into her bag and producing a folder of her own. "I haven't been disclosing classified information, I've been collecting it." She opened the folder to reveal surveillance photographs, communication intercepts, and analysis reports that Agent Chen had prepared as props for this exact scenario. The documents appeared to show detailed intelligence about network operations, recruitment activities, and operational planning. The woman's professional demeanor disappeared entirely as she realized Maya wasn't a potential security breach, she was an active counterintelligence operative who had been gathering information about their network from the beginning. The trap had been sprung, but now Maya found herself face-to-face with a hostile operative who had just realized she represented a far greater threat than anyone had anticipated. The woman across from Maya transformed in an instant. The carefully constructed persona of Colonel Walsh evaporated, replaced by the cold calculation of a professional intelligence operative who had just realized she was trapped. "You're not what we expected," she said quietly, her eyes scanning the hotel lobby for potential threats and escape routes. Maya kept her voice steady and her posture relaxed, despite knowing that several hostile operatives were positioned throughout the building. "Neither were those 3 infiltrators at Forward Operating Base Blackwater. Your network has a pattern of underestimating American soldiers." The operative's hand moved slightly toward her briefcase, a motion Maya recognized from her accelerated training as preparation to signal backup or retrieve a weapon. Maya casually placed her own hand on the folder of intelligence documents, a gesture that would trigger the response team if the operative made any aggressive moves. "The information you're carrying," the operative said, studying the surveillance photographs visible in Maya's folder. "How long have you been gathering intelligence on our operations?" "Long enough to identify recruitment patterns across 7 different installations," Maya replied, allowing confidence to creep into her voice. "Long enough to map communication networks and operational timelines. Long enough to understand that Lieutenant Morrison was just one small piece of a much larger organization." The operative's professional composure began cracking as she realized the scope of what Maya was claiming. If an American counterintelligence operation had been monitoring their network for months, the damage to their organization could be catastrophic. "You're bluffing," she said, but uncertainty had entered her voice. One soldier on guard duty couldn't have gathered this level of intelligence. Maya opened the folder wider, revealing additional documents that Agent Chen had carefully prepared to suggest comprehensive surveillance of network activities. Communication intercepts, financial records, operational schedules, and personnel identification files created a convincing picture of extensive intelligence gathering. "One soldier prevented your coordinated attack across 7 NATO installations," Maya countered. "Did you really think we wouldn't follow up on that success by investigating your entire organization?" The operative's eyes widened as she processed the implications. If an American counterintelligence operation had been monitoring their network for months, the damage to their organization could be catastrophic. "You're bluffing," she said, but uncertainty had entered her voice. One soldier on guard duty couldn't have gathered this level of intelligence. Maya opened the folder wider, revealing additional documents that Agent Chen had carefully prepared to suggest comprehensive surveillance of network activities. Communication intercepts, financial records, operational schedules, and personnel identification files created a convincing picture of extensive intelligence gathering. "One soldier prevented your coordinated attack across 7 NATO installations," Maya countered. "Did you really think we wouldn't follow up on that success by investigating your entire organization?" The operative's eyes widened as she processed the implications. The network had assumed Maya's success at Forward Operating Base Blackwater was fortunate circumstance rather than part of a larger counterintelligence operation. "What do you want?" the operative asked, abandoning any pretense of being a military investigator. Maya recognized the critical moment in the operation.
The network representative was ready to negotiate, which meant she believed Maya had enough intelligence to cause significant damage to their operations. This was the opportunity to extract maximum information before the inevitable capture or elimination attempt. I want to understand how extensive your recruitment operations have been. How many soldiers have you approached? How many installations have been compromised? How many attacks are still being planned? The operative glanced around the lobby again, clearly calculating her chances of escape versus the value of the intelligence Maya appeared to possess. Even if I wanted to answer those questions, I don't have access to that level of operational information. Network security prevents any single operative from knowing the complete scope of activities. Maya had expected this response. Agent Chen had briefed her on standard intelligence compartmentalization procedures that would prevent field operatives from having comprehensive knowledge of network operations. But you do have access to regional coordination, Maya pressed. You know about operations in your sector, recruitment targets in your area of responsibility, and communication protocols for your cell structure. The operative hesitated, then made a decision that revealed just how seriously she took the threat Maya represented. She reached into her briefcase and produced an encrypted communication device. "I need to contact my handlers," she said. "This situation has escalated beyond my authority level." Maya recognized this as exactly what Agent Chen had hoped would happen. By convincing the network that she represented a major security breach, she was forcing them to activate communication channels and coordination protocols that could be monitored and analyzed by counterintelligence teams. "Go ahead," Maya said, "but understand that any attempt to coordinate an attack on me will be met with immediate response from the assets I have positioned around this building." The operative paused in the middle of activating her communication device. "You have a backup here? Did you really think I'd walk into a meeting with hostile intelligence operatives without proper support?" Maya asked. "The same planning that prevented your infiltration at Forward Operating Base Blackwater has been applied to this operation." For the first time since the conversation began, the operative looked genuinely concerned about her personal safety. She'd been operating under the assumption that Maya was either a potential recruitment target or an isolated threat that could be eliminated quietly. The possibility that she was walking into a comprehensive counterintelligence trap hadn't occurred to her. Maya pressed her advantage. "Your surveillance team has been under observation since they arrived at this location. Your communication channels are being monitored. Your escape routes have been identified and blocked. The only question remaining is whether you choose to cooperate with our investigation or become another casualty of your network's poor operational planning." The operative set down her communication device without activating it. "What kind of cooperation are you talking about?" "Information about recruitment operations in this region. Details about planned attacks on NATO installations. Communication protocols that would allow us to identify other network elements." Maya paused, studying the operative's expression. "Your choice is between providing that information voluntarily or having it extracted after your capture." The hotel lobby continued its normal evening activity around them, but Maya could sense the tension building as the operative considered her increasingly limited options. She was trapped between betraying her network and facing capture by American counterintelligence forces. After several moments of silence, the operative made her decision. The recruitment operation targeted 43 soldiers across 11 installations, she said quietly. Lieutenant Morrison was responsible for identification and initial assessment, but actual recruitment was handled by other operatives. Financial pressure, personal grievances, and career dissatisfaction were the primary selection criteria. Maya maintained her composed expression while mentally cataloging the intelligence value of what she was hearing. 43 potential compromised soldiers represented a security breach far larger than anyone had anticipated. "How many successful recruitments?" Maya asked. 17 confirmed assets providing various levels of intelligence and operational support. Most provided scheduling information, security procedures, and facility layouts. 3 were positioned to provide direct assistance during operations, similar to what was planned for you at Forward Operating Base Blackwater. The scope of the network's success was staggering. 17 compromised soldiers could provide intelligence about security vulnerabilities, operational planning, and personnel movements across multiple installations. The coordinated attack Maya had prevented was just one example of what this level of intelligence penetration could accomplish. "Are there other operations currently planned?" Maya continued. The operative hesitated, then nodded slowly. 3 additional coordinated attacks scheduled over the next 6 months. 2 targeting supply convoys, 1 focused on disrupting a major training exercise involving multiple NATO countries. Maya realized she was gathering intelligence that could prevent additional attacks and save hundreds of lives. Her actions at Forward Operating Base Blackwater had been just the beginning of dismantling a network that posed a significant threat to NATO operations throughout the region. At that moment, Agent Chen's voice came through Maya's earpiece with a single word that changed everything: move. The operative's backup had apparently decided to intervene despite the risks. Maya grabbed her folder and moved quickly toward the hotel's main entrance as armed figures emerged from concealment positions throughout the lobby. The careful negotiation had ended, and the situation was rapidly becoming an armed confrontation. Maya reached the exit just as Agent Chen and her response team entered through multiple entrances, trapping the hostile operatives in a coordinated capture operation. The woman who had posed as Colonel Walsh was taken into custody along with 4 other network members who had been providing surveillance and backup support. 6 weeks later, Maya stood in the Rose Garden at the White House as President Harris presented her with the Distinguished Service Cross for her actions at Forward Operating Base Blackwater and subsequent counterintelligence operations in Germany. The intelligence gathered from the captured operatives had led to the identification and arrest of 37 network members across 8 countries, effectively dismantling the organization that had threatened NATO operations throughout the region. From routine guard duty to presidential recognition, Maya's military career had taken a path she never could have imagined. But as she looked out at the assembled dignitaries and military officials, she knew her most important accomplishment wasn't the medal or the recognition. It was the knowledge that soldiers throughout the region could sleep safely because one person on guard duty had trusted her instincts and refused to let threats pass unopposed. The ceremony concluded with a reception where Maya finally had the opportunity to call her family in Colorado. Her father answered on the second ring. "Maya, we saw the ceremony on television. Your mother's been crying for an hour." "Dad, the military is providing a financial assistance package for families of medal recipients. The ranch is going to be fine." There was silence on the line. Then her father's voice, thick with emotion. "We're proud of you, sweetheart, but we always knew you were something special." Maya smiled, looking out at the White House grounds where tourists gathered to take photographs and children played on the lawn. "I was just doing my job, Dad. Sometimes that's enough to change everything." 3 months after the White House ceremony, Maya found herself in an unexpected position. General Hawkins had personally requested her transfer to the newly formed Joint Counterintelligence Task Force, a unit specifically created to combat the type of sophisticated networks they'd encountered. Maya's unique experience as both a target and successful operative made her invaluable for training other soldiers to recognize and counter recruitment attempts. The task force headquarters at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, buzzed with activity as intelligence analysts from multiple agencies worked to identify remaining network cells across the globe. Maya's role involved briefing field commanders on recruitment indicators, developing security protocols for high-risk installations, and occasionally participating in operations when her specific expertise was required. Agent Chen had been promoted to deputy director of the task force, and she often relied on Maya's practical insights to refine their operational approaches. "Academic understanding of network recruitment is valuable," Chen explained during one of their planning sessions. "But your first-hand experience with their methods gives us advantages we can't get from textbooks or simulation exercises." Maya had adapted to her new responsibilities with the same methodical approach that had served her during that crucial night at Forward Operating Base Blackwater. She studied intelligence analysis techniques, learned advanced surveillance methods, and developed expertise in psychological operations that helped her understand how hostile networks targeted vulnerable personnel. The captured operatives from Germany had provided a wealth of information about network structure and operational methods. Under careful interrogation, they revealed recruitment techniques that had been refined over years of operations against NATO forces. Financial pressure was just one approach. They also exploited career frustrations, personal relationships, ideological grievances, and family vulnerabilities to identify potential assets. Maya's analysis of these methods led to the development of comprehensive countermeasures that were implemented across all NATO installations. Soldiers with financial difficulties received enhanced support services. Personnel showing signs of career dissatisfaction were provided additional counseling and advancement opportunities. Security protocols were modified to limit access to sensitive information while maintaining operational effectiveness. More importantly, Maya helped develop training programs that taught soldiers to recognize recruitment approaches before they become serious security threats. Her presentations to officer groups across the military emphasized that network operatives were sophisticated professionals who could appear completely legitimate while gathering intelligence or positioning assets for future operations.
The officer who tried to recruit me seemed more professional and competent than many legitimate military leaders I'd encountered, Maya explained during a briefing at the Pentagon. Their success depends on appearing to belong in military environments while identifying vulnerabilities that can be exploited over time. The training programs Maya developed were eventually implemented throughout the military, reaching thousands of personnel who learned to identify and report suspicious approaches. Within 18 months of the network's dismantling, attempted recruitment incidents decreased by 73% across all NATO installations, primarily because soldiers had been educated about the methods hostile intelligence services used. Maya's sister Jessica finally had her wedding in Colorado, with Maya serving as maid of honor in a ceremony that took place on the family ranch. The financial assistance package from the military had indeed resolved the family's debt problems, but more importantly, the ranch was now profitable enough to support itself through improved management practices Maya's parents had implemented. During the wedding reception, Maya's father pulled her aside for a private conversation they'd been avoiding since her return from deployment. "Sweetheart, I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. Are you happy with how your life has changed? All this recognition and responsibility, is it what you wanted when you enlisted?" Maya considered the question carefully while watching her sister dance with her new husband. "Dad, when I enlisted, I thought I wanted a steady career with good benefits and the chance to serve my country. I never imagined I'd be involved in intelligence operations or briefing generals about national security threats." "That doesn't answer my question." Maya smiled, recognizing her father's persistence, the same trait that had kept the ranch operating during difficult years. "I'm happy with who I've become. The responsibilities are challenging, but I know the work I'm doing protects soldiers like the person I used to be. That gives meaning to everything that happened." Her father nodded slowly. "Your mother worries about the dangers you face. She reads about international incidents and wonders if you're involved in situations we'll never hear about." "Some of my work is classified, Dad, but I can tell you that the skills I developed during that night at Forward Operating Base Blackwater have been applied to preventing other threats. The vigilance that kept our base safe has helped develop systems that protect installations around the world." The conversation was interrupted by Jessica, who insisted Maya join the dancing rather than standing on the sidelines discussing serious topics during a celebration. As Maya danced with various family members and old friends from Colorado, she reflected on how different her life might have been if she'd never questioned Lieutenant Morrison's convoy route or if she'd accepted the disciplinary guard duty assignment without maintaining her tactical alertness. 2 years later, Maya received a promotion to Staff Sergeant and assignment as Senior Instructor at the Joint Counterintelligence Academy, where she trained the next generation of soldiers who would face increasingly sophisticated threats from hostile intelligence networks.
Her courses covered everything from basic surveillance detection to advanced operational security, but they always began with the same fundamental lesson. Threats can emerge during the most routine assignments, she told each new class of students. Your ability to recognize when something doesn't belong in the normal pattern of military operations could prevent attacks, save lives, and protect national security interests. Never assume that your current assignment is too insignificant to matter. Maya students included officers, enlisted personnel, and civilian analysts who would deploy to installations around the world. Many of them would face recruitment attempts, security challenges, and operational decisions that could have far-reaching consequences. Her training provided them with tools to succeed in those situations, but more importantly, it instilled the mindset that every soldier was responsible for the security of their unit and their mission. The Academy's graduation ceremonies became emotional events for Maya as she watched young soldiers prepare to deploy with knowledge and skills that could protect them and their fellow service members from threats that most people never realized existed. Each graduating class represented another layer of protection for military operations worldwide. On the 5th anniversary of the Forward Operating Base Blackwater incident, Maya received an invitation that surprised her. The base was being renamed in honor of the soldiers who had served there during its operational period, and Maya was invited to speak at the dedication ceremony. Standing at the podium where she'd once been just another soldier serving a deployment, Maya looked out at an audience that included current base personnel, veterans who had served there, and family members of soldiers who had been stationed at the installation. The base had been expanded and modernized, but Sector 7 remained largely unchanged. Still the eastern perimeter, still considered a quiet sector suitable for routine guard duties. 5 years ago, I thought guard duty in Sector 7 was the most boring assignment possible, Maya began her speech. I was wrong about many things that night, but the most important mistake was thinking that routine assignments couldn't lead to extraordinary circumstances. Military service teaches us that vigilance, preparation, and courage matter most when we least expect them to need them. The ceremony concluded with the unveiling of a memorial recognizing all personnel who had served at the installation, including the 8 Quick Reaction Force members whose lives had been saved by the prevention of the communications center bombing. Maya's name was included among dozens of others, but seeing it carved in stone alongside soldiers who had served with distinction during their deployments gave her a sense of completion she hadn't expected. As she walked through the base one final time before departing, Maya stopped at the guard tower in Sector 7. The concrete structure remained unchanged, still providing observation over the eastern approaches that had seemed so empty and harmless during her deployment. A young soldier was on duty, scanning the perimeter with the same night vision equipment Maya had used. "Evening, Sergeant," the soldier called when Maya climbed the ladder to the observation platform. "Evening. How's the watch tonight?" "Quiet, Sergeant. Nothing happening out there." Maya smiled, remembering her own confidence in the sector's security before everything changed. Stay alert anyway. Sometimes the quietest nights are when you need to pay the closest attention.
The soldier nodded seriously, clearly recognizing the advice as more than casual conversation. Maya descended the ladder and walked back toward the main base, knowing that her example and training had created a generation of soldiers who understood that every assignment mattered, every watch had purpose, and every decision could have consequences far beyond what anyone might anticipate. As she ended the call and rejoined the reception, Maya reflected on how a single night of guard duty had transformed not just her own life, but the security of an entire theater of operations. The lesson was simple but profound. In military service, there was no such thing as routine duty when lives depended on vigilance, courage, and the willingness to act when action was required. She was no longer Private First Class Maya Rodriguez from Colorado. She was a proven soldier, a skilled intelligence operative, and living proof that extraordinary circumstances could reveal extraordinary capabilities in the most unexpected people. The guard duty assignment that had seemed like punishment had become the foundation for a career that would define her life and protect countless others.
Sometimes the most important battles were fought not by armies, but by individual soldiers who refused to let darkness pass unchallenged. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.